I'm hoping that it looks good. I can't hear you. Let me make sure I unmute you. Can you hear me, Sylvia?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I can hear you.
How's that?
Awesome. So I know we're
Awesome.
gonna keep waiting for a couple of folks to join us, but I just want to go ahead and say welcome to everybody who has joined us online thus far. We're excited to have the CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA joining us. Very exciting. Now, Sylvia, do you remember I know you've done a lot of events all over the country, and this was probably about 2 years ago, but I participated in a program that Alicia Silvette put together, I believe,
Uh-huh.
a mentor matchmaking program in New York City, and I met
Yes,
you there. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. That was a fun evening.
It was. And actually, after that, I became a part of the President's Council for the Girl Scouts in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you for doing that.
And so I go camping with the Girl Scouts now.
Oh, fun.
I always share. I'll share after I do your introductions. My pretty difficult experience when I was a Girl Scout of my own camping experience. I would always have to go home early because I would get sick. And so when I was an adult, and this was like last year, I was able to go with the Girl Scouts in DC with the council, and it was the first time that I was actually able to complete an entire Girl Scout camping trip.
That's great. I'm glad you finally had success.
I finally had success. So awesome. We will, for the sake of your time, I know that it is Memorial Day weekend, and either you have probably gotten in front of the barbecue or you're looking forward to getting in front of the barbecue, but I don't want to keep you too much on your wonderful Sunday here. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Um,
Great.
so first off, thank you again so much for joining us, Sylvia.
Mhm.
Walker's Legacy is proud to present Ask a Boss, our latest digital masterclass series featuring women of influence who have achieved success in business and beyond. Thank you for joining us for today's masterclass with Sylvia Acevedo, CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA. My name is Natalie Madeira Cofield, and I am the founder of Walker's Legacy. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's Legacy was created with a mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's Legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com or visiting us on any of our social media platforms at Walker's Legacy. Before we get started, I would like to say thank you to the Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, for their continued partnership in helping to make Ask a Boss and other Walker's Legacy programming possible. So let's go ahead and get started with today's program. Sylvia, I'm going to read a little bit of your bio and then we'll get right into it. So Sylvia Acevedo is an engineer, rocket scientist, tech entrepreneur, author, and the CEO of Girl Scouts of the USA. She was appointed interim CEO in 2016, becoming permanent in 2017, and coming full circle from her youth as a Girl Scout in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Did I say that right? Las Cruces, New Mexico?
Las Cruces.
Las Cruces. I was trying to put an accent on it. It was
Yeah,
unsuccessful, Sylvia.
no problem.
Through Girl Scouts, Sylvia discovered her passion for space, science, and math. Sylvia began her career at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where she created algorithms and analyzed data from Voyager 2 spacecraft flyby of Jupiter and 2 of its moons, Io and Europa. She went on to work as an engineer and executive at Apple, Dell, Autodesk, and IBM. She has led a transformation of Girl Scouts programming and STEM, the outdoors, entrepreneurship, and leadership. She spearheaded the largest rollout of badges in recent history, more than 100 badges in STEM and the outdoors. She was the first Hispanic student, male or female, to earn a graduate engineering degree from Stanford University, an MS in industrial engineering, and she holds a Bachelor of Science with honors in industrial engineering from New Mexico State University. Sylvia, you are widely acclaimed, highly recognized. I could continue to keep going on with your bio, but I think I'll conclude with saying that Forbes named you as one of America's top 50 women in tech, and in 2019, In Style magazine placed you as number 7 on its list of 50 women who are changing the world. So again, Thank you so much, Sylvia, for taking the time to join us this Sunday. So I'm going to kind of, I have my questions for you, but I just want to start off. I always like to ask people background experiences. One, the Girl Scouts are so incredibly influential. There are so many women around the world who achieved leadership, learned about friendship, and other basic foundational principles of womanhood and other maturity indexes. And I really would love to hear from you about your experience being a Girl Scout and kind of how this all came full circle for you.
Thanks for that. I didn't realize how important Girl Scouts had been in my life. It was the inflection point. I just thought I was different than my cousins, and I didn't understand why. And it was about, I don't know, over a dozen years ago, a researcher from Stanford University called me out of the blue. And they said, you're one of the first male or female Hispanics to have ever gotten the graduate engineering degree from Stanford, and you're still one of the few. So how did that happen? Because frankly, at the time, Stanford wasn't really looking for kids in southern New Mexico. And second, at that time, girls like you weren't even graduating from high school, much less going to college. So how did all this happen? And the more they interviewed me, the more it all kind of came back to when I was a Brownie Girl Scout and I was on my first camping trip. And I was in a sugar coma because I had eaten my first s'more. And I was sitting there and I was looking, and New Mexico, there's great starry nights. And I was looking at the stars, and my troop leader came by and sat next to me and showed me constellations and the difference between the twinkly lights that were stars and planets. I had no idea. And she remembered that. So later on, when we were earning badges, and she really encouraged me to earn my science badge. And she said, do something with space because you like looking at the stars. So I decided to make an Estes rocket, amongst other things. And I tell you, I failed not once, not twice, 5 times. Finally, on the 6th time, I got that rocket to leave the desert sand. And, that made me realize I could do it. I could do science and math. And so at that point, I began doing more science and math. And I started, if I was assigned the even problems, I did the odd and the even problems. And when you're a kid and you do something and you do it well, then you want to do it some more, and then you get better at it. So then you do it some more. So then, I got so good at math, I became a rocket scientist, right? But had I not had that interview from Stanford, I would not have realized the important connection because one, my love of science was kind of ignited, but my potential quite crowded. So for me, I didn't know how to create opportunity. When you live in near poverty, you don't know how to create opportunity. So the Girl Scout cookie program really taught me how to create opportunity. I remember when my troop leader said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to do everything. So she said, you have to sell this many boxes of cookies. And that was a huge amount. But she said, here's what you do. You have your goal, your dream, and then you break it down into smaller pieces so you can accomplish them. Wow, what a great idea. And then the other thing she told me is never leave the site of a sale until you've heard no 3 times. And that was important because the first time somebody said no to me, I persisted and persisted until she finally bought 1 box, maybe to get rid of me, but it taught me I can get this. So as that kid in elementary school, I began developing what I call my resilience muscle. How do you get to that yes muscle? So that when I wanted to play drums and they told me I couldn't, I kept going after my band director. Well, why not? Because you're a girl. Well, that's not going to change. Why else? You're not strong enough. Okay, I have to show you that I'm strong enough to carry the drums. Yes. And then that persisted in my career. So when I had that interview with folks from Stanford, I realized, wow, Girl Scouts was so transformative and is why I was so different than my cousins. I really got to live my life potential. So then I began volunteering. I got on the national board, and then they asked me to join as interim and then to stay.
Awesome. This is truly a kind of, you were shooting for the stars story. You were looking up in the stars, predicting your future, basically.
Yeah.
Is there a Girl Scout song for all this? Because I know when I was out camping, there was literally a song for every single thought that I could ever imagine. Any activity I was doing or thought I had, we had a song for it.
You know, that's a really good idea. I don't know if we have a stars. We now have a badge for it. One, it's called a Space Science Badge for Brownies that kind of recreates it. You earn it. One of the ways you earn it is also by naming planets and stars up there.
Okay.
But you're right. When I was, I realized how important that was. And so I wrote a middle school book because so many kids wanted to learn more about my story. So I wrote a book called Path to the Stars. Awesome. It's a paperback in English and Spanish, and it's for middle school. So if you're an adult, it's a really easy read.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome. So you talked a little bit about, when you were younger and you're saying, I want to be a rocket scientist, I want to be a drummer, even just the basic things that you were expressing interest in, the challenges that you were having as a woman in that space. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you may have experienced and your current push for girls to excel in the areas of STEM.
You're 100% right. Unfortunately, a lot of those barriers exist. One, I always tell girls, the first person you have to convince is yourself. Once you've convinced yourself, you can do anything. But the problem is so many of them have seen the media, which does not portray them. So it's really hard for them to see themselves. So that's why I think, being a mentor, having things like Walker's Legacy are so important, because you don't know that these things exist. And that's really very tough. So for Girl Scouts, we try very hard for girls in rural areas, in urban areas, and in suburban areas, and girls of all socioeconomic, to provide this type of programming. And we are doing a lot with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And I'll tell you why that's so important. The world is being rewritten around us, line by line, code by code. And girls are not at the table. And also the people that are at the table coding are not diverse. Mm-hmm. And so we're not reflected. And I think the most many horrible examples, but one example is with photos. This happened to both Google and Apple. And it's just unconscionable that it happened to both companies. But that is when they came up with their iPhotos, they didn't take advantage of skin tone. And so they would equate people of darker tones with animals, which was horrible. But also, women, when the photos try to determine who you are, if you have really short hair, they always equate you as a man. Mm-hmm. Rather than as a woman. And that is simply a coding. That meant somebody coded in a line that when there's short hair, that's a male. Mm-hmm. And that is, to me, that's like a really basic thing that is just not right. But there's so much. For example, somebody told me at Apple that they caught this application that had been outsourced for a mortgage application. And so just to get the software done quickly, they outsourced it to a country outside the United States. When the application came back, only the man's name was on the mortgage, not the title of the property, not the woman, right? They assumed it would be a man and a woman, no other ways that you could buy and get a mortgage, right? I mean, and then the man had many titles on the drop down, Mr., Doctor, license, all these things. Women had Mrs. and Miss.
Yeah.
If we're not at the table, those things happen over and over. And the same thing goes with the color palette choices, the music chosen. And so we're constantly being given things that are not culturally relevant or culturally familiar to us. And that's seen as outside. So we need to have more women, diverse voices who have the skills to be able to be writing that line by line, code by code. For women in particular, it is life-threatening. For example, there was a self-driving car that was being tested in Arizona, and a woman was walking her bicycle across a crosswalk. The video on the car for the self-driving car, it acknowledged that there was an object there, but no one had ever coded woman with a bicycle.
Wow.
So it didn't exist. So she was run over and killed.
Wow.
So technology will literally run us over.
Hmm.
And think about all the safety issues with self-driving car, with ride-sharing services where our personal protection wasn't included and many women lost their lives. So it is really vital for women and diverse voices to have the skill set. So for me at Girl Scouts, I'm really pleased that so many girls that have a wide variety of backgrounds are getting these skills. We need them at the table, and we need them knowing about robotics, cybersecurity, yes, art, design, but almost everything is going to have a digital component. And my dream is that one day somebody will say, you cannot make that change. It's going to cost too much. And I want that woman going, no, the sensor change. I did that when I was doing a robotics in Girl Scouts. Give me a break, right? That's what we need. We need girls with that kind of courage, confidence, and that skill set to be able to make those changes in our world.
I love it. I love it. I want to ask you, so one of the things, my background actually is in coding. So I actually did computer operation-based information systems as well. So really hats off to you for your leadership in that space. I know we've been talking a little bit about STEM, and before I move on to the next question, your experience as a rocket scientist. I don't want to kind of just move on from that because that is so unique, and it's not something that a lot of people have had any type of background experience in, and certainly very few women. And so I'd love if you could just talk to us about some of the career experience you had as a rocket scientist and what you were doing, and what, you know, a couple of the most amazing projects that you worked on during that time.
Sure, I really appreciate that. So thank you. One of the cool things about being the Girl Scout CEO is I get my own patch. And my patch tells a story of how Girl Scouts helped me become a rocket scientist. And on my patch, there is the planet, and that's the planet Jupiter. And I always like to ask girls if they know what planet that is in the red dot. And that's so important because I got so good at math, I had that opportunity to go work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratories, right? And you go hang out with people from Caltech. If anybody watches the Big Bang Theory and they talk about the nerds at Caltech, I mean, I was amongst them. I was one of those, but a long time ago. But what's so important was I got on the Voyager 2 mission, right when it was going by, we call a flyby of a planet. And that doesn't happen very often. So I was there at Christmas. Imagine being starting a job December 1, and then it's Christmas time. That's what I got. So I was able to be on about 2 months, and then before the flyby of Jupiter. And back then, it's not like we all had these personal computers. So we were getting the first images coming back that were so clear of Jupiter and its moons. And I remember the excitement. And again, it was going to fly by, so every moment counted. And so we actually slept there, right by where the images were and the data was coming back, because you didn't want to miss any moment of that. And that was so exciting. There really weren't very many women at all there, not at all. And it was just such an exciting time to you're one of the first people seeing Jupiter up close. Wow. And my job was we were getting all this data back from and I was assigned 2 of the moons, which are Io and Europa. And I had to do a lot of analytical work about, of the data that was streaming back. So that was really exciting. At the same time, I was on another mission, which at the time was called Solar Polar Solar Probe. And we were going to be sending a spacecraft to the sun. Now, if you think about it, back then we were saying it was going to help with telecommunications, and back then who cared, right? Because you'd be a little bit of sunspot and you didn't care. But now it matters so much because we all have these mobile devices, and sometimes sun flares will really upset our transmission. Yeah. So anyway, what was interesting about that is that was just in the design phase, and you just had to be potential, theoretical, dream, big. How can we solve this problem? If you think about a football field, Earth is on one end of the end zone and the sun is at the other end. So that's how close we are to the sun now. We are going to send a spacecraft to the 4-yard line. And that means that's really close. So it would be really heat intensive. There'd be a lot of radiation, solar winds, asteroids. So we had to think about all those things. And for me, that was so exciting because you had to wonder, and you just had to just like imagine the universe. And today we now have, for our older girls in Girl Scouts, a badge that is about the universe and the potential and just wondering. So it took many decades, and I had left the project by then. But in August of 2018, that solar polar flight got renamed Parker Solar Probe, and it is now on its way to the sun. Wow. So that's really, I know, it's really exciting. So what it was like working as a woman. So one of the things is, you had to really own your space, and you had to be confident. I always hated that men would always check my math. It really annoyed me. It's like they don't check anybody else's math. And I remember one time one guy forgot, because a lot of what you're doing in space is on the international system, so you always have to change it to metrics. And one guy, he had made a huge flaw and he hadn't done it, so he was still using the US measurement style instead of going into metrics and meters. And I was like, if I had done that, they'd kicked me off the team, right? But he was like, hey, guy, you forgot that, you made a mistake. Had I done that, I would not have been given that amount of courtesy. They would have said, she can't cut it, a basic mistake. And I was really surprised by that, because they were always checking. So, I just like, how dare you? So I just made sure I was confident, and that, I always double checked my math, but I always knew it was right.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I can see how excited you are about this experience that you've had, because the joy just comes off in your face and your smile, talking about your time as a rocket scientist. So that's pretty incredible. And again, I had to go in there because I feel like not enough of us have ever had an opportunity to actually have a conversation with a rocket scientist, let alone a woman rocket scientist. So, okay. So Sylvia, we are, you have achieved and excelled in the spaces of rocket scientry. You moved into the space of STEM, working for major technology companies. For those who are on the call today and are really very interested in nonprofit leadership at its highest ranks, one of the things that I did hear you talk about was that you started with a council. You started being on like your local Girl Scouts board. Mm-hmm. If you talk to us about the journey from being on the board and what steps you took to kind of get you to a space where you have become the CEO of Girl Scouts USA.
Right. Okay, that's a really good question. So one of the things that I really do encourage people is, having a heart of the mission. So whatever it is, the nonprofit you care about, have the heart of the mission. But you also have to realize that they are businesses. They are nonprofit businesses, but nonetheless, they are businesses. So, and today, especially with what's going on in the world, the pressures on them are intense, not just because of COVID, but because across America, states are cutting the social safety net. And so nonprofits have to step in. And so you really have to be sharp about your business skills and understanding business, finances. It's so important, while keeping the heart of the mission. So for me, once I started getting involved in Girl Scouts, the heart of the mission I totally got, because, changed my life. But I could bring my business skills. I had worked in large technology companies. I had also run a startup. I had also done a lot of educational work. So all those things came in to help. So for example, at the local council area in Austin, Texas, they didn't know how to reach girls that were diverse, Hispanic and African American. And I would work with them to say, you've got to recruit differently. If they don't see people like them, they're not going to think they should belong. And so we did a variety of things. We created a really cool little magazine called Hey Chica for a while, so we could start reaching girls. We got involved with the sororities in the African American community, as well as the African American churches. And that really helped boost up attendance. And so the more the girls saw others there, they saw the opportunities. And for me, what people don't realize with Girl Scouts is it really is a leg up on life. Our awards, the bronze, silver, they're like service awards, like the Eagle Scout, and then we have the gold award. And the difference between a service award like the Eagle or the Girl Scout bronze or silver, that's like a park bench, right? It's a good thing to do. But a gold award is like the park itself. Like it is a project that like creates a sustainable change in your community. Those girls that do Gold Award, they get National Merit Scholars, they get into the best colleges, they get tons and tons of scholarships. And I really want more girls to know that, and especially more girls of a diverse background, because it would open up the world of opportunity for them. And, you know, for example, at the Air Force Academy, I was there giving a speech last year, and the commandant, the superintendent there, told me that almost all the women at the Air Force Academy were Girl Scouts, and they were Gold Award Girl Scouts.
Wow. That's
right?
incredible. Yeah.
And so, you know, when you're thinking about how can you make a difference, what is it that you have a unique skill in? Is it network? Is it fundraising? Is it business management? And for me, you know, understanding business, how to communicate that, you know, how to make a difference in communities that we're growing, for example, in diverse communities, all those things came together. And I'm so, and then in addition to my business skills, really understanding, you know, balance sheets, and, you know, that's an important part of running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were on the board of your local Girl Scout, and then was there a role that you took after that, or did it kind of go from that board to what
No,
you
you know,
did professionally and then CEO?
well, I actually wasn't on the board of my local council, but I did a lot of volunteering for them, and they actually named me one of their women of distinction.
Of
But
course
because
they
of,
did.
yeah, thank you. But because of that, I was also volunteering in education, and the former governor of Texas, Governor Ann Richards, she had heard of my interest in Girl Scouts, and she had called me and wanted to have lunch with me. And she said, I'm starting a school, the Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders, and I'd like you to be on the board. And at that lunch, you know, I told her about, you know, how important Girl Scouts was to me. Little did I know, she knew somebody on the national board, and she called them and she wrote them a letter, and she said, I've got the person that you need to put on your board. So it was by me doing nonprofit work, both in Girl Scouts and in the education world, that got me noticed to get me on that prestigious board. And then, you know, my background was a really good fit with what they needed. So you'll find that nonprofit boards, they need people that are good in accounting. They don't need people that are good in legal, but they really need people that are good in business and also fundraising. Those skills are really important. So you may say, well, I'm just an accountant. Wow, you know what? Nonprofit boards need you. You know, or I just do audits. Oh my gosh, you know, nonprofit board could really use you. But most importantly, on a nonprofit board, it's really important to have the heart of the mission, so that you, you know, now it's a paid position for me, but on the national board, you know, 8 years, it wasn't paid at all. And, you know, you just do it because you believe in the cause.
Awesome. I love it. So we talked a little bit about STEM, and we talked about the 100 or more than 100 new badges that have come under your leadership, one of which kind of resonates well with our audience, which is the entrepreneurship component. So as you talked about, when you were a young Girl Scout, and when these young girls are out selling cookies, they are learning business skills, and they are learning the art of selling. And so I'm very happy to see that entrepreneurship has become a focal point of what the Girl Scouts is also focused on. And I'd love if you could share with us a little bit more about the mission of that work, the efforts of it, and how that came about.
All right. So actually, I've been a big fan of Madam C.J. Walker for a very long time, and I used to read her books. And so one of the things that I loved about her is, you know, she wasn't a formal chemist or a pharmacist, but she figured things out herself, right? And then she doesn't get credit for it, but she's one of the first person, if not the first person, to create multi-level market selling in the United States. You know, come on. You know, if you ask people, they go, oh, that's Avon. No, it was, she figured it out because African-American women weren't allowed to have those kinds of jobs, or any kind of jobs, right? And certainly not as a salesperson. So for her to have figured out how to create a sales force, you know, incredibly smart. I love that. She was the first woman to have put a woman foreman of a factory. I mean, she did all these amazing things. I'm a big Madam C.J. Walker fan. But, you know, for Girl Scouts, and I think because I read so much about her and how the cookie program was so important to me, the same thing with Girl Scouts. Do you know women and girls nonprofits get less than 9 cents of every dollar?
Wow.
Animals, and I love animals, animals get more per dollar than women and girls. Animals do. Okay, and so there are more national monuments to animals than women and girls. I was in New York, and they recently finally added a female statue, but they have horses, they have dogs, not just a dog, they have dogs, they have pigeons, I'm not pigeons, different kinds of birds, they have sheep.
Wow.
And until last year, 0 women. Okay, so with Girl Scouts, one of the things our founder found was we weren't getting the funding, just like all women and girls things, we don't get the funding, right? So she thought, when she heard of Girl Scouts selling cookies, she's like, that's what we're going to do to fund Girl Scouts. And so Girl Scouts is the largest independent female organization in the world.
Wow.
Because of the cookie.
Wow.
Because of the cookie. So sometimes donors will say, we're going to take our money from you, which is what happened in Seattle, Washington, because they didn't like a transgender girl being in Girl Scouts. So a funder said, I'm taking my $150,000 back, and we said, take it. I mean, obviously we'd like to have the money, but we're not going to change
Our principle.
who we are because of that. And so that's so important. If you are a solid entrepreneur, you get choices. You may not like, but I love that. So Madam C.J. Walker, she had choices. Her salespeople, they had choices, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're creating opportunity. You're creating opportunity for yourself and for others. And that's what I love about the cookie program. And I'll tell you, this year we had to cut our cookie season short, and we had about $50 million of inventory. So I decided to get to my list and to help girls finish out the last, inventory that we had. And I know a lot of people, and I don't think I helped sell more than 10,000 boxes, okay? Which is a lot, but we have girls every year, some girls that sell 28,000 boxes. I'm like, how do they do that, right? That's like amazing. And I love that, because when you learn that entrepreneurial skill, you know how to get people to a yes. And especially girls that are diverse, that is such an important skill set. I have been told no many times, and people, just like that first cookie sale, when somebody told me no, they expect me to go away. And you know what? I come back and I'm like, well, so tell me why else I can't do that. And they're not ready for that question. They're like, I told you no. I'm like, well, why not? In my career, there have been times where I've been told I couldn't do something, and I'm like, why not? And they're like, they know they can't say because I'm a woman. They'll go, oh, it's too dangerous. I'm like, okay, name me the most dangerous country. They name the country. I buy tickets and I fly there. I get business letters. I came back. I had to do that twice in my career. Wow. But I know that's the entrepreneur. So it's so important for our girls to, not only when they're selling the cookies and getting the cookie cash so that they can do programs in their community, it's for them also to see that they're learning a skill that they can create their own business. And I can't tell you how many women I have met that tell me, I got my start in business by selling cookies. And now, because we also do digital cookie, you can sell online. I know this is giving them the right skills to create in the future.
Perfect. So a couple of things I want to make sure I point out here. One, I heard from you about diversifying your revenue streams. Mm-hmm. And the example that you used was about a principled decision that you all had to make around a funder, but having a diverse revenue stream allowed you to feel confident and financially comfortable making those types of decisions. So that's always important, whether you're a nonprofit organization or whether you're a for-profit organization. The second is, I love that you know so much about the legacy and history of Madam C.J. Walker. And you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people don't know her legacy as a business innovator, not just from the products that she was creating, but the methodology that she created around sales and distribution, which is really, the impetus behind Walker's legacy. So that really resonated with me. And then the last piece was around sales of the cookies. And ironically, we have some Girl Scout cookies at the house right now. And I'm like, how did this happen? Where did you get this from? Because we've been, in COVID lockdown. But I think they were ordered online, and the young lady came and dropped them off at the house. So let me just tell you, your distribution model is working here. And I was going to ask you, in the wake of COVID, so there are two things on the forefront, right? There's the women's movement, and there is the dynamic of the Boy Scouts, which I'm going to ask about shortly, if you're okay with me asking a question about that and the changing landscape for your organization. But COVID and how it has the potential to impact the Girl Scouts. And I'm very happy to hear about the online platform, but how are you all preparing for something like this as a billion-dollar nonprofit organization with hundreds of thousands of members?
Thanks for that question. We got a kind of a heads up. We were seeing what was happening in Europe and obviously around the world, but Seattle, our Seattle council, it was hit hardest, the first in the US. And our CO called us and said, take this seriously. It is, not to be messed with. And so early on, we began stressing how important it was to really take safety precautions. And, it's funny to think about it now, but we bought all this sanitizer and upped our cleaning regimen when it was like, what are you doing? Like, why do you have sanitizer? And why are you guys cleaning 3 times a day? I'm so grateful because at our headquarters, we really didn't have anyone get sick with COVID until after we'd already closed our offices, which meant they probably got it outside of work. So I was grateful that we did that, and especially being in New York City. So what we did was we said, okay, first, girl safety. So that's why we cut short the cookie sale, no in-person cookie sales because of that. And what I'm real proud of is in 9 days, we launched an online national store and national cookie care campaign that it was 1.7 billion media impressions. I mean, it was an amazing marketing event. And then also just the logistics and the supply chain behind that in 9 days, amazing. At the same time, in a parallel, we got everyone to focus on digitizing our program so that girls would have something to do that wasn't school, that was still fun, engaging, was skill building, but in a way that it was with other girls. That's been fantastic. I will say, we were Girl Scout, girls love cybersecurity because it's about their safety and personal, they're so worried about what's happening with the internet and, being liked, not liked, etc. So being able to have control over your digital devices is really important. So our cyber badges, girls were earning them about 10,000 a month before COVID hit. Yeah. Our first year, 128,000 cybersecurity badges, amazing. But in March, our first indicator that girls were still doing them, we got 8,000 badges. So we only went down by 20%. So to us, that told us our move to virtual had been really effective and really good. Now, going forward, how do we make sure when it's finally safe to come together? How do you do a hybrid of both digital and in person? That's kind of the next challenge. But I'm very proud of how fast we moved. And we always pivot around one thing, which is girl safety. And that's what we used as our mantra.
I love that. So I'm going to pause here really quickly and just say, if you have a question for Sylvia, please feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll make sure that I ask that question. I'm going to end with this question, Sylvia. I know we just talked a little bit about the changing landscape because of COVID.
Right.
And it sounds like you all have been nimble enough to move quickly in that dynamic. And again, I have a box of Girl Scout cookies right now that otherwise, if you all didn't have the operations and systems that you did, I wouldn't have this at the house. But the changing landscape as it relates to Girl Scouts, we talked a little bit about the transgender Girl Scout that that you mentioned in Arizona, the Boy Scouts dynamic of being the Scouts, being on the President's Council. This is a conversation that we've had many times. And I'd love to get your opinion about, how you feel the changing dynamic of potentially inclusion or lack thereof, and pivots by other organizations might have any potential impact on Girl Scouts and its global mission.
So we're really excited because we're doubled down on who we are. So we are the girl only space and girl leadership. So remember, we're dealing with children. We're dealing with children's age 5 to 18, right? They're not yet adults. And, girls do learn different. Girls do come together different. And so we make sure that the programming reflects them. And one of the reasons we've been so amazingly successful in STEM, so almost every female astronaut in space, a Girl Scout, in Silicon Valley, it's like 80% of all the female tech leaders that were born in the US, Girl Scouts. And the reason is that we design our programming in a way that reflects them. I'll give you a quick example. Cybersecurity. How do you teach malware to a 7 and 8-year-old? Now, if you teach it the regular way, you start talking about protocols and networking, girls don't care. What we do is we get girls to sit in a circle and talk. Turns out girls like to sit in a circle and talk. And then we give them a ball of yarn and they pass the ball of yarn to one another as they talk. So in just a few minutes, they've created a physical network with that yarn, right? And then we say one of those girls in that circle had a virus. And then you can see how that virus spread to all the girls. So we have redesigned all of our programming in STEM, or all of our programming, to have social emotional characteristics for girls, and also in a way that they get interested. Because here's what we know. If a girl is interested, then she'll do it, and then she'll get confident once she's done it. And when she's confident, then she can build the competence. Last year, we had over 1 million STEM badges earned. So we are the largest national effort to get girls the 21st century skills that they need with positive outcomes. No one is doing what we're doing. So when you think about other organizations, you know, we're going to focus on what we do really well. We're not looking at them. You mentioned the Boy Scouts. They're currently going through bankruptcy. We're grateful we're not going through anything like that. Our focus is always on girls' safety. We will always go for the safety of the child before we try to protect the organization.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So we have one kind of quasi question / statement from Shaylee Hackerman. And so basically Shaylee is talking about the sales component of what you talked about, which is a big part of being a Girl Scout, is selling the cookies and feeling comfortable and confident to get to 3 no's, and just techniques to not feel pushy, right? Because I think the other piece of this is, and there was a whole campaign, I'm not bossy, I'm the boss, where, you know, if a woman continues to go, it doesn't want to hear no, then all of a sudden it's, you know, she's being too aggressive, she's being too assertive. So as it relates to a professional woman who's still selling something, it's not cookies, but it's something else. Maybe it is cookies if she's a baker. How would you encourage her to go about feeling confident enough to keep going forward despite the no's?
Okay, so I love this question. So you have to say to yourself, I want this, I earn it, I belong there. So you've got to go there with that confidence first, okay? And then you've got to think through why they're objecting to you. Because sometimes they're objecting to you because they're afraid of your failure. You know, they're thinking, if I give you this opportunity, you'll fail. What does this say about me? I can't help you. Or sometimes it's, you know, other reasons that aren't, you know, as benign, but figure out what it is. So like one time, you know, my boss was really afraid, you know, I could speak Spanish. No one in his department could speak Spanish. I said, I will go travel. You tell me the most dangerous country. He's like, you know, I can't have employees go there. And I'm like, heck, you know, I know there's women in those countries, come on, right? And I speak the language. So he told me the country, I flew there. I came back with letters of endorsement. And, you know, he had no choice but to hire me, right? So I got through to what the real challenge was. So it's really important that you really have those kind of conversations with folks and don't back off. Another time at a really big company, and if you look at my bio, you can kind of tell which one of them it would be, but they wouldn't, this was to get into the Pacific region, they wouldn't even take an interview with me. And finally, I put together a presentation and I showed that if they had the same penetration of these multinational companies that I had in the US, and I did that in the Pacific region, that they would have sales of hundreds of millions of dollars more. And I put the presentation together and I had that short meeting right outside an elevator. The vice president said, okay, I'll take a couple of minutes, because I'm like, I've got something that's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. I mean, how could he say no, right? So we went into the small conference room nearby. He thumbed through it. He grabbed the presentation. I put my hand on it. And he said, "Can't I have it?" And I said, "Yes, you can, but it comes with me." So you got to be, sometimes you got to be assertive. You really do. And if I don't have regrets, but I even think I could have been even more assertive than I was. You know, I could ask for more stock options. I could have been a lot more assertive than I was. You know, I did well, and I'm grateful for what I did do. But I look back and I really encourage women to really ask for more, to take more chances.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So we have a question about the Gold Award from Zawadi Bryan. Hi, Zawadi. How do we elevate the Gold Award to be as desired and recognized as the Eagle Scout?
Yeah, you know, and we're doing a couple of things around that. I completely agree with that. So one of the things is, you know, putting the bronze and the silver awards. Those are service awards like the Eagle Scout. You're doing a service project. So we're, I like to say, you know what they said about Ginger Rogers? She did everything Fred Astaire did, but she did it in high heels and she did it backwards, right? So at Girl Scouts, kind of, we did the same thing. We didn't just have one award, we have 3 awards, right? And then the third award, those 2 service awards, any which of them would be equal to an Eagle Scout. But the third one, you have to have a sustainable change in your community, the Gold Award, right? So I think, and then we only highlighted the Gold Award and we just diminished it by putting it just with the Eagle Scout. It was like, no, the bronze and silver with the Eagle, the Gold Award. So we are now doing the appropriate positioning. And the Gold Awards, it's amazing. At least 3 state laws are changed every year by a girl going after her Gold Award, at least. And then we even have some girls going after their silver. I think in Colorado, they changed the secondhand set smoke law. I'm like, and they were in middle school. So you're right. We've got to do much more, realizing we've got a bit of a legacy. You know, the Boy Scouts have been doing the Eagle Scout for 100 years. So it's a 100-year-old brand. Typical to women, we kept changing the name. It was first the Golden Eaglet, then, you know, it was the Curved Bar. You know, we changed the name, then it was First Class. It's now all the Gold Award, right? So we're going to give us a little time to keep building on, but please recognize that and tell people, hold up your bronze and silver. Somebody goes, I was an Eagle Scout. You go, yeah, I was a bronze and silver. I did a service project too. But Gold Award, like, you know, I made a sustainable change, right? And some of the projects are just amazing. This year, a girl for one of the Gold Awards, she got the state law in Hawaii to change so they don't use types of lotions that are bad for the coral reef. Like, and she's in high school.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Okay. The next question is, I'm interested in starting a troop at my school, my child's school. What are you looking for in troop leaders?
Okay, great. Thank you. Realizing you don't have to do it alone. You can bring other friends. And the great thing now that we're discovering with digital, you can find people all over online that can help you. So for example, let's say you're, I was just doing this in this week with a virtual camping in Alabama. And so they were doing something with Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama, but they wanted a female who was diverse to talk to the girls. So they called on me. And so I was able to zoom in. And then the girls after me were going to talk to the people at Space Camp and identify the planets and the stars in the sky that night. That to me is a great example. The troop leader just kind of had to organize it, you know, but she didn't have to do all the things. So bring some of your posse, bring some of your friends with you so you don't have to do all of it. And then, you know, get people to help you too. And it now with virtual, you can get so many more people to come in and support you.
I love it.
Thanks for doing that.
So another question is, how would you recommend business leaders get involved to help you with your mission?
Thank you for that question. You know, one of the things you know, recognizing the silver, bronze, and gold award in your hiring, which is really important. Sometimes they only know other awards and not that one. The second thing is in your community, see how you can support Girl Scouts in your community. They're doing so many amazing things. I think it's well over in the hundreds of thousands of face masks that girls have made. Just in Charlotte, I think one girl and her grandmother made over 1,000 masks.
Wow.
I mean, North Carolina, it's just amazing. So we're doing so many great things in the community. So we are your supporter. The other thing is we are your workforce pipeline. You now have girls that are comfortable with STEM, with robotics, with cybersecurity. Give them a look. If you have internships, involve them in there. And, when you're looking at philanthropic dollars in your community, look at Girl Scouts as well.
I love it. The next question is from Sandra Fernandez. Do you have any advice for moms homeschooling girls right now? Are there any activities or projects they can start while social distancing?
Yeah, go to Girl Scouts at Home. So go to girlscouts.org, go to Girl Scouts at Home. You're going to get so much great stuff for girls. And it's also that they don't feel alone. Right now, that we're really working on what we call the hybrid. So there's some great stuff virtual, but then we get you outside. We get you doing things with your hands. So you're not just doing things through a computer. We really are focusing on the social emotional aspect, because we know at some point, hopefully soon, we're not all going to be just communicating and sheltering at home through digital device. We know the interpersonal skills are so important. So we do know, and we want girls and Girl Scouts to develop those leadership skills for human beings, not human doings. We're like human beings. So how do you collaborate with others? How do you work with others? How do you, how do you do teamwork? All those important leadership skills. We want to make sure they're there. But we also know girls love to have fun. And so we have some, especially if it's a younger girl, we do scavenger hunts. And so girls will do scavenger hunts to put things together. Or if they're working on a badge and maybe one girl in her home has certain of the pieces of the resources that you need and another girl has it in another home, how do you kind of put them together virtually? It's just been really exciting what girls have done.
Love it.
So Girl Scouts at Home.
So Girl Scouts at Home. So Sylvia, I'm going to kind of close out with just a couple of fact-based questions, or kind of like quick speed round questions. What is the most acquired badge? Actually, I'll say the existing badge, and then of the 100 new ones that you've created, which ones are the most acquired badges under your leadership?
So, I think that's going to be some of our STEM, and I think cybersecurity. I mean, last year, 128,000, it surprised us. Wow. How popular those badges were. I mean, just super popular. So yeah, we get a lot of, cookie leadership, those kind of things, but cyber completely surprised us.
What is your favorite Girl Scout song?
I'll Make New Friends.
Really?
Yeah, make new friends. I used to know all 6 verses. Right now I can only think of the first 2, but there's 6 verses to Make New Friends, and that's my favorite Girl Scout song.
I love it. And then, is there anything next on the horizon? Once we get past COVID, that we should all kind of be thinking about, not even necessarily from the perspective of how to support. Although I do want to say, I mentioned that I'm on the President's Advisory Council in DC. I assume that there may be some President Advisory Councils in other cities. So I would contact your local Girl Scouts chapter to see if, as a business leader, there are ways in which you can both give back philanthropically, but also give back of your time. When we started this call today, I talked about going camping with the local Girl Scouts for the region as part of the nation's capital region President's Council. So that's another way that you can be engaged, whether you have kids or not, because I don't have any children. But what is there anything else that's on the horizon that we should kind of be looking out for? Some other way to kind of celebrate Girl
Yes. I am so excited about this. So yeah, we're coming out with more STEM badges and outdoor badges this summer, but more importantly, civics. We're doubling the number of civics and democracy badges across America. Civics has been taken out of American classrooms in many states. We now have 2 generations of parents that have never had one civics lesson. So they don't know about democracy. They don't know that the president is balanced by 2 other branches of government, because you think, he's a king. No, you know, you have your judicial, executive, and legislative. That's so important. So we are doubling our democracy badges so that girls and Girl Scouts will learn that. Right now, half of all female elected officials in America are Girl Scouts. Think about that. We're 7% of the population, but 50% of all the elected officials.
Wow.
In Congress, the senators, 3/4 of the female senators are Girl Scouts.
Wow.
60% of the congresswomen are Girl Scouts. The African-American elected officials in Congress, almost 60% of them are Girl Scouts. All 3 secretaries of state, Madeleine Albright, an immigrant, Clinton from the Heartland, Girl Scout, and Condoleezza Rice, a child that, you know, her ancestors were slaves, a Girl Scout. So all 3 secretaries of states were Girl Scouts. So watch out for their impact, because we want them to have the values and the skills to create the world around them. So watch out for civics, watch out. And in November of 2018, the youngest person elected at a state legislature was a New Hampshire 19-year-old Girl Scout Gold Award. The youngest person, male or female, being elected to Congress.
Wow.
A Girl Scout. So you're going to see a lot more of that. And we're definitely teaching them about civics so that they can make their voices heard to create the world with our laws that reflect them and the community that they want.
I love it. You know, Sylvia, just in listening to you, and you are a wealth of knowledge about the alum, so to say, of the Girl Scouts programming. And I think one of the things that I'm loving about this talk as we're closing out today is just how impactful the Girl Scouts has been and is currently. And I think a lot of people, whether they have children or not, think of the Girl Scouts and they think of it kind of in the context of young women, not recognizing that these young women then go on and become adult women, professionals, civic leaders, business bosses, rocket scientists, and you all still consider them to be alum of the Girl Scouts, and they are still a Girl Scout. And so
You bet.
they absolutely are. And so there's just so much infusion of the Girl Scouts in our society that I don't even think people really think about when they think about this, because it's a young woman's named organization with a grown woman's impact.
Yeah, I love that. You're absolutely right. And you know, women, we tend not to tell our stories, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to do a better job of telling our stories and taking our space. Absolutely.
Yes, perfect. Well, Sylvia, I just want to say again, on behalf of myself and the entire team at Walker's Legacy, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. This is live on Facebook, and we will also be making this video available via YouTube. If there's anything in the conversation that really struck a chord with you that you'd love to hear again. We'd also like to thank all of you who submitted the fantastic thought-provoking questions that helped frame today's conversation. Walker's Legacy programming looks to bring you insightful, meaningful opportunities for conversation and community, and we hope that you found this to be a very special Zoom conversation with Sylvia Acevedo, the CEO of Girl Scouts of the United States. Just a few notes of upcoming programs for Walker's Legacy. On Thursday, May 29th, we are excited to host Breaking the Stigma, Your Mental Health Matters, a mental health summit. This is a very trying time right now during COVID, but on top of that, we also know that people of color, particularly women of color, are disproportionately impacted by things like anxiety and depression for a multitude of reasons, including financial insecurity and other life trauma. And so we invite you to join us for this conversation with a range of doctors, nutritionists, and a keynote presentation from Shanti, who has created the initiative Silence the Shame. And then we also have 2 amazing other women coming to join us for our Ask a Boss series, including Ivy Macgregor, who is the Director of Social Responsibility for Fiance's Be Good on June 7th, and B. Dixon, founder of the Honeypot, on the 14th. And we always encourage you to keep looking out for more local programs that happen in your city, whether they be virtual or in person. Visit walkerslegacy.com to stay up to date with upcoming programs. Sylvia, again, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to share this hangout opportunity with you this afternoon. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Memorial Day weekend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.